His name is Brady Poppinga. Brady, how's it going today?
Going well. How you guys doing?
We are
Doing
awesome.
Great.
We are awesome. You are a Super Bowl champ, BYU legend, Fox Deportes host and analyst, Westwood One Radio, and author. How did we get here, Brady? You have a lot going on, man.
Yeah, it's just about doing what you love to do, very simply. And basically, I've been able to do Fox Deportes in Spanish. And again, I'd love to be involved with football, and I love Spanish, but able to combine that, obviously, the whole English end of things, and then writing the book. I just thought, what a great opportunity is to tell your story, because everybody's got a story, and I look at the theme of sort of my story, and it was competition, so I went with that one. So, I wrote a book called The True Spirit of Competition. You can find it where books are sold, and it's got a lot of fun stories in there, stories about times I was at BYU, stories when I was at the Green Bay Packers, and when we won the Super Bowl, those kinds of things. It's a good read. Very easy. 100 pages for all ages. Check it out.
Awesome.
We'll have Amazon or anywhere where books are sold.
Awesome. We'll have to get a copy and add it to the new Steve Young book on the desk here. Let's talk about BYU and Michigan State. This is an intriguing matchup, especially on the heels of what BYU's done earlier in the season, where they've matched up pretty well with a lot of good competition. What do you think of this game between BYU and Michigan State?
Well, the bottom line is they have to, even though Michigan State has a strong running defense, BYU's got to go in and they got to be patient with the run. I mean, that's their strength of their offense. Heck, it's the strength of their team. Because you look back at Utah, where it's similar in the sense that was their strength defensively, stopping the run. You saw Ty try to do some things to work around the strength of Utah's defense. Now, you're going to do that, but you can't completely abandon the very thing that is your strength, too, which is running the ball. You got to be a little bit more creative. And so when you're dealing with a sizable front, some things that you're going to try to do is work the edges, do some counters, get some angle blocks for the big guys up front, which, look, that's been one position group that has really jumped out to me, probably more so than any this year, and that's the offensive line of BYU. Coach Empey's done a phenomenal job of continuing on what 2J had going. They've even had some replacements come in. So you're going to have to change a little of your scheme, but stay with what got you in the position that you are in the sense that, stick with your strength. And that is running the ball with Jamal Williams, get Canada going a little bit. I like to see that, so Jamal's just not completely gassed. And then defensively, they have a ton of issues to overcome, and they're not crazy issues. They're controllables. The first is from coaching. You can't just line up and play. You have to be able to have certain disguise elements to your defense, especially when you're playing, last week against Toledo, really good offense. This offense this week isn't as good, but still they're smart. If you're going to line up in a cover two the whole time and just play it, they are going to gash you like crazy, and it's going to be another defensive performance. So the first thing they need to do is just show different looks, show single high, and then all of a sudden move at the snap of the ball to two high. Vice versa, show two high to boom, move to the single high. And that's, at the very least, the things that you could do to keep the offense guessing as to what you're doing defensively. If not, it's going to be the same performance. And then defensively, too, the effort just was not there against Toledo guys. That was what was the most alarming to me, because the effort had been there every game up until then, and all of a sudden you see guys like Kanekua just taking plays off and walking around like, what the heck is this? This is not BYU defense of the last 14 years. Something that I worked my tail off, guys, to establish, because when I was there, we struggled with that. We had guys that weren't given full effort. And so now all of a sudden we're going to revert back to that in 2002? No. So they got to play with effort on the defensive side of the ball, and then from the coach's standpoint, they have to show some disguises, and you can't just line up and think you're going to be a successful defense. And offensively, stay with the run game, make some tweaks, and if they do that, I think that gives them the best chance to win.
Brady, if Michigan State is successful, though, stifling BYU's rushing attack, how confident are you that the Cougars can win with the passing game?
It's not a good thing. You never want to get into a situation, where you're one-dimensional, and that goes for any team. And I don't think Taysom's a poor thrower. I wouldn't be afraid to. He showed it already in situations where he's been one-dimensional with the clock running against him in 2-minute situations. He can make it happen. I'm not worried about that. But what I am worried about is the idea that, now we have to use him as a drop-back guy, because that seems to be their go-to when they are in the game, when it's outside of 2 minutes, and they have to throw the ball, that he becomes a drop-back guy. And unfortunately, that's just not something he has developed very, you could say, very far along in his career. It's just because he hasn't done it. And so if they are going to go to that, let's say the run gets stopped. You can use the quick game as the alternative to a run. High percentage throws, but make them RPOs, man. Run pass options to where you can still get some run out of it with your quarterback. And I know he's feeling a little sore right now. Taysom, last game hardly even ran at all. But still move him around, roll him out, let him be on the move. Don't use him as a drop back guy. That's going to increase the probability of success. And then the receivers, guys. Oh my goodness, they played better this last game, but they have to continue to do their job and catch the ball. Against West Virginia, it was completely unacceptable. Poor play out of the position group. I put that on coaching, but they got to help them out too. And so they can survive if it gets to a situation where they're running into a wall with Jamal Williams in that running game, to where they can do some tweaks to work around that, to where you use high percentage throws instead of the running game. But you got to get Taysom on the move. And then the receivers have to earn their keep, man. And when you're playing tight man-to-man coverage against these defenses that have athletic secondaries, you can't expect to be wide open every time. You're going to have to make the contested, difficult catch a run-of-the-mill, consistent thing. And if they do that, that's going to put them in a good position to win, and that's where they have lacked when they played against these athletic secondaries.
Brady Poppinga is on BYU Sports Nation, and he's bringing the heat. I wish you'd come with an opinion. No, I'm just kidding. Jamal Williams has been fantastic in a couple of games this year. Of course, the record-setting performance against Toledo. Do you believe that he'll be able to run the ball against Michigan State?
No question. But you got to be patient. And, again, you're going to have to use a lot of angle blockings. I like the zone scheme against the bigger fronts. And then what I'd really like to see them do a lot like the Shanahans in the NFL do. Use the zone, because Jamal is a very good zone blocking runner because he's got very excellent patience, one-cut ability, and then he lets his blocker set up vision. All those kinds of things are attributes that he has that then you can complement with the boot play action. They call it a waggle, which is sort of a different form of a boot. But anyway, it's a misdirection play action pass to where you're using and showing that zone blocking scheme, getting the defense to run to one side, and then boom, you go right back the other way, and that's where you get the tight ends on the drags, the over routes, and the receivers the same thing, to where now you're getting those guys in situations to where you're showing run, and then you're immediately converting into a route, which helps against man press, by the way, which they're going to see, except Michigan State runs a different man press. They don't have help in the middle. So if they can beat this man press, that's where Michigan State gives up a lot of big chunk plays in the passing game. I'll just tell you. But that's a good way to do it. Get the running game going in the zone running game. Then you get the misdirection play action pass boot stuff going. And guess what happens? If you burn them with the misdirection boot stuff, all of a sudden they don't play as hard against that zone blocking scheme because they're afraid of getting out of position with the misdirection pass game, which then will open up holes. And what happens with most of those schemes is over time throughout the game, it starts to loosen things up. So patience is the key for the play caller, Ty Detmer, if that's going to be the plan.
There's been a lot of talk about this Michigan State team and what type of team are you going to see coming off 2 losses. I've used the terms deflated or determined. What type of team do you expect BYU to be facing tomorrow?
They're going to be tough. I mean, this is a team that's coached by a real ornery sucker in Mike D'Antoni. How do I know about him? My roommate for 6 years, 5 years, with the Green Bay Packers is A.J. Hawk, and for a number of years, Mike D'Antoni was his defensive coordinator. I mean, he told me story after story. I mean, this guy is a salty, stubborn, focused guy he has some way of, it's like Nick Saban, of motivating his guys. And so his guys, they've gotten beat bad a couple times over the last few weeks that is unacceptable in their standards and the way they do things. So they're at home. They feel like they have a team at BYU they should beat, and so I expect them to come out and play tough, be physical. It's going to look a lot like Utah, I would imagine.
In 2004, you played a heck of a schedule to start the season. Notre Dame at home, which BYU won, at Stanford, USC, at Boise State, at Colorado State when they were better. What was that like emotionally and physically as you played like this year for BYU, game after game after game that tested you, and then you were under 500, and it was a struggle at the beginning of the year.
Well, look, it didn't help that when we beat Notre Dame, and we played one of the best defensive games BYU had seen in a long time. I mean, we just dominated those suckers. And then all of a sudden Monday they go fire Val Hell, who brought in everybody. Croton, and then Croton brought in Bronco. And I'd never seen a coaching staff so scared with their. And at the time I didn't know, I was just like whatever. But I could have, as I look back on it, they were so scared at that point, and it just threw our whole season into a flux. So I didn't even think about, we're playing Stanford. I mean, I was just like, holy cow, how could you ever do that? What a stupid decision. After one of the biggest wins in probably the last 5 years at that time anyway, in BYU history, you go and you fire the athletic director who hired the head football coach. I mean, what message does that send? So we were really trying to recover from all those weeks. And so it didn't even register on our Richter scale, the caliber of teams we were playing, the type of focus you had to have on a week in, week out basis. But as I look at this schedule, it reminds me of any big P5 schedule in the NFL to where you don't have weeks off. I remember, with 2001 with with BYU when I was a freshman, it's like almost every week it was like, dude, there was just blaring weaknesses in the teams we faced, in Tulane and, all these other teams that, we rolled through that year that you're just like, what the, this is, and then it would be like, boom, you'd play a team like Cal, and they'd have a sweet running back. And you're like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. And then another 3 or 4 weeks where you just didn't see any really good players. That's not the case. I mean, this is like a week in and week out deal where you have to be sharp, you have to be precise, you have to be focused, and you have to come to play in terms of competing, with an edge. You can't afford to come and be like, I'm just going to go through the motions. Yeah, and since we're BYU, we should be in this game. You can't afford to do that with this kind of schedule. And so that's the one thing I think, I think Utah took them a number of years to transition out of that. BYU, I mean, I think they're actually a little bit further along that curve just because of the makeup of the kids at BYU is a little different at Utah, a little more focused, a little more mature. But you have to come every week with the greatest amount of competitive edge, with the greatest amount of focus and precision when you are playing in this type of schedule. Every single week you're facing a top-tiered opponent.
Brady, just a moment ago, you mentioned A.J. Hawk, and recently you were on his show, his podcast, I guess, and Aaron Rodgers was on there. In fact, you've done a lot of these where Aaron Rodgers has also been on the show. He always wants to ask you about BYU football. He wants to talk Cougar football. Have you converted Aaron Rodgers to be a BYU fan?
He surprised me when we were doing the podcast. He was talking about Kai, he was talking about the Utah game. And I don't know if you guys saw the game day where he was the celebrity picker.
Mm-hmm.
He picked BYU to beat Arizona in the first week. And so maybe that caught his attention after that. But, I don't know where all that came from, man. But maybe it's just he and I being teammates. It sort of intrigued him because BYU is a very respected football program across the country, because especially when people are educated about what makes up the program, and when they're educated, nobody jumps to, they're older guys. They jump to the fact that you took 2 years off for the most of these guys to go on missions. And then they think about, man, if I had to take 2 years off, would I be where I'm at? And most of them are like, no way. Because you get, you're just so out of it. And all of a sudden you got to start sometimes off worse than even when you started. It's an unbelievable challenge to come back from. And unless you experience it or can relate to it, you don't fully understand how difficult it can be. And so I think when these guys are more educated about what makes up the BYU team, I think they sit there extremely impressed as to the success over time that the BYU program's had under the conditions that you're dealing with return missionaries, guys that left the game for 2 years and got missionary legs, came home fat and out of shape, and all of a sudden now had to rework themselves into being good college football players. And so I think there's a high respect for BYU football, and as you are educated and around guys from BYU, and Aaron obviously played with me for 6 years, we started our careers together with the Green Bay Packers. I think that sort of introduced them into what BYU football was, and it's very intriguing to them. And so I think that's really what the interest grabber was for AJ and Aaron.
Well, Brady, great stuff. We'll check you out in all the things you're doing. We'll look for the book as well, and should be a fun game tomorrow. We appreciate the passionate opinions today.
Hey, my pleasure. Anytime you need more passionate opinions, I'm here for you.